I stepped into the grand ballroom wearing my simple black dress and worn shoes. The wedding was beautiful, with crystal chandeliers and white roses everywhere. I had received an invitation from my old college roommate Amanda, though I suspected it was sent out of politeness rather than genuine friendship. The other guests wore expensive gowns and sparkling jewelry. I noticed their curious stares as I walked to find my table. I had deliberately dressed down, wanting to observe rather than stand out. My long dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and I carried a small, plain purse. "Is that Leslie?" whispered someone behind me. "I thought she'd amount to something after college." I smiled quietly to myself. If only they knew the truth about who I really was now. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey. I found my assigned seat at table 12, far from the wedding party and close to the kitchen doors. The other guests at my table barely acknowledged my presence. They were too busy discussing their expensive vacations and designer purchases. "I just bought a new car," announced Miranda, a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair. "It cost more than most people make in a year." The others laughed and shared their own stories of wealth and success. I quietly sipped my water and listened. I had learned long ago that people revealed their true nature when they thought no one important was watching. These people clearly believed I was nobody special, just Amanda's charity case from college. "Some people never change," Miranda said, glancing at my simple outfit. "Still shopping at discount stores, I see." I simply smiled and nodded politely, storing every word in my memory. When Amanda approached our table during the reception, her smile faltered slightly upon seeing me. "Oh, Leslie. I wasn't sure you'd actually come," she said with fake sweetness. "I hope you're doing well these days." "I'm doing wonderfully, thank you," I replied genuinely. "Your wedding is beautiful. You look radiant." I meant every word, despite Amanda's obvious discomfort with my presence. "Yes, well, Jonathan's family spared no expense," Amanda said, gesturing around the lavish ballroom. "We're so fortunate to have such successful family supporting us." Her emphasis on successful wasn't lost on me. Amanda quickly moved on to greet other guests, spending much longer chatting with those wearing designer clothes. I watched my old friend work the room, clearly valuing people based on their apparent wealth and status. It was disappointing but not surprising. College had been a long time ago. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey. As the evening progressed, I became increasingly aware of the whispered conversations about me. The other guests made little effort to hide their gossip, assuming I was too unimportant to matter. "Did you see her shoes?" giggled Patricia, a redhead in an emerald dress. "They look like they came from a thrift store." Her companion nodded in agreement, both women staring openly at my simple appearance. "I heard she works at some small nonprofit," added another guest. "Barely makes enough to pay rent, from what I understand." They spoke as if I weren't sitting just a few feet away. I continued eating my dinner calmly, though inside I was carefully cataloging every insult and slight. I had learned patience over the years, and tonight was teaching me valuable lessons about these people's character. Their true nature was being revealed with every cruel comment and dismissive gesture. When it came time for the bouquet toss, all the single women were called to the dance floor. I reluctantly joined them, not wanting to draw more attention by refusing. I stood at the back of the group while the others pushed forward eagerly. Amanda turned her back to the crowd and threw the bouquet high into the air. It sailed over the reaching hands of the eager women and landed directly in my surprised grasp. The crowd fell silent for a moment before offering polite applause. "Well, that's ironic," Miranda muttered loud enough for others to hear. "As if she could afford a wedding like this." Several women laughed at the cruel comment. I held the beautiful white roses and baby's breath, thinking how symbolic it was that something meant to bring luck had found its way to me. I suspected I would need that luck for what I was planning to do next. As the reception began to wind down, I approached Amanda one final time. Thank you for inviting me, I said sincerely. I had a lovely evening observing everything. I handed Amanda a small white business card. Amanda glanced at the card dismissively before doing a double take. Her face went pale as she read it carefully. This can't be right, she stammered, looking up at me with wide eyes. I'm afraid it is, I replied with a gentle smile. I'd been wanting to tell you about my new position, but the evening seemed focused on other things. I gestured around at the guests who were now watching our conversation curiously. The business card was simple and elegant: Leslie Black, Chief Executive Officer, Harmony Foundation. Below that was listed assets worth over $50 million. Amanda's hand trembled slightly as she held the small piece of paper that changed everything she thought she knew about her old college friend. Word spread quickly through the remaining guests as Amanda showed my business card to her closest friends. I watched with amusement as the news rippled through the ballroom like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know who I really was. The Harmony Foundation was well known in philanthropic circles as one of the most successful charitable organizations in the country. Its CEO was famously private, rarely appearing in public or at social events. None of these people had connected the simply dressed woman at table 12 with the powerful figure they'd read about in business magazines. Miranda approached me hesitantly, her earlier smugness replaced with nervous uncertainty. I had no idea, she began awkwardly. We didn't realize. She trailed off, unsure how to apologize for hours of condescending behavior. I smiled kindly at the woman who had mocked me all evening. There's no need to apologize, I said graciously. You've shown me exactly who you are, and I appreciate the honesty. It's been very enlightening. As the guests processed this new information, several of them began doing quick mental calculations. If I ran a foundation worth $50 million, my personal wealth was likely far greater than anyone had imagined. The woman they dismissed as a nobody was actually the richest person in the room. Jonathan's father, a successful businessman who had been ignoring me all evening, suddenly appeared at my side. Ms. Black, he said with newfound respect, I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm William Harrison. He extended his hand eagerly. We were introduced earlier, I replied politely, shaking his hand. You seemed quite busy at the time. I remembered clearly how he had looked right through me when Amanda had tried to introduce us during the cocktail hour. The irony wasn't lost on anyone nearby. The woman they'd all written off as unimportant was now the center of attention. But I had been carefully watching and listening all evening, and I had my own plans for how to handle this newfound interest in my company. More guests gathered around me, suddenly fascinated by my work with the Harmony Foundation. I explained how the organization focused on providing educational opportunities for underprivileged children and supporting women starting their own businesses. We believe in helping people reach their potential, regardless of their background or current circumstances, I said meaningfully. Some of our most successful programs have come from investing in people that others overlooked or dismissed. Patricia, the redhead who had mocked my shoes earlier, now hung on every word. That sounds absolutely fascinating, she gushed. I've always been passionate about helping others. The statement rang hollow given her behavior throughout the evening. I nodded politely but continued watching these people carefully. Their sudden interest in charity work was as transparent as their earlier dismissal of me had been. I was learning valuable lessons about their true character, and I was already forming plans for how to use this knowledge in the coming weeks. As word spread about my true identity, the networking began in earnest. Business cards appeared from everywhere as guests tried to establish connections with the powerful CEO they'd been ignoring all evening. My company would love to explore partnership opportunities, said Thomas, a man who had earlier referred to me as Amanda's poor friend from college. His smile was broad but didn't reach his eyes. I run a boutique consulting firm, added Catherine, thrusting her card forward eagerly. We specialize in helping successful people like yourself maximize their charitable impact. Minutes earlier, she had been part of a group laughing about my simple dress. I accepted each business card graciously, reading them carefully before placing them in my small purse. I appreciate your interest, I said to each person. The foundation is always looking for authentic partnerships with people who share our values. My emphasis on the word authentic was subtle but clear. I made mental notes about each person's approach, comparing their current behavior to their earlier treatment of me. Amanda pulled me aside privately, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Leslie, I owe you a huge apology," she said, tears threatening to spill over. "I treated you terribly tonight, and I'm ashamed of myself." "You treated me exactly as you saw me," I replied gently. That was honest, at least. I wasn't angry with Amanda, just disappointed in how shallow my old friend had become. "I was so caught up in impressing Jonathan's family and our wealthy friends," Amanda confessed. "I forgot what really matters. I forgot who you really are as a person." She looked around at the guests who were still trying to get my attention. I placed a comforting hand on Amanda's shoulder. "People show their true nature when they think there are no consequences," I said wisely. "Tonight has been very educational for me. I've learned exactly who I can trust and who I cannot." My words carried more weight than Amanda could fully understand at that moment. That night, I returned to my modest hotel room and began making notes about the evening. I had deliberately chosen to stay at a simple hotel rather than the luxury resort where most guests were staying. Image had never been important to me, but understanding people certainly was. I spread the business cards across my desk and began researching each person who had approached me. My assistant had taught me to always investigate potential partners thoroughly, and tonight's behavior had given me plenty to work with. Miranda worked for a marketing company that had been trying to land the Harmony Foundation as a client for months. Patricia ran a catering business that regularly overcharged nonprofits. Thomas owned a construction company with a history of cutting corners on charitable building projects. Each person who had mocked me earlier was now revealed to have a professional connection to my world. They had unknowingly insulted the very person who could make or break their business aspirations. I smiled quietly as I began planning my response to their cruel behavior. Monday morning arrived with a series of phone calls to my office. My assistant, Maria, brought me a list of people requesting meetings, partnerships, and consultations. Every name was familiar from Saturday's wedding reception. Miranda from Premier Marketing called 3 times, Maria reported. "She says it's urgent regarding a proposal they submitted months ago." I remembered how Miranda had laughed about my thrift store shoes just 2 days earlier. Thomas had also called, claiming he had exciting new ideas for foundation building projects. Patricia wanted to discuss catering for upcoming foundation events. Each person who had dismissed me was now desperately trying to get my attention. I instructed Maria to schedule brief phone calls with each of them. I wanted to give everyone a fair opportunity to explain themselves, though I suspected most would simply pretend Saturday night had never happened. Their responses would tell me everything I needed to know about their character. Miranda was the first scheduled call of the day. Her voice was nervous and overly cheerful as she pitched her marketing services to me. "Premier Marketing has been eager to work with the Harmony Foundation," she began enthusiastically. "Yes, I remember your proposal from several months ago," I replied calmly. "We've been carefully considering all our options." I let a meaningful pause hang in the air before continuing. "Saturday's wedding was quite enjoyable, wasn't it?" Miranda's voice faltered slightly. "Oh, yes, Amanda's wedding was lovely. Such a beautiful celebration." She clearly hoped I wouldn't remember our interaction, or lack thereof, from that evening. "I found it very educational," I said. "It's always interesting to observe how people behave when they think no one important is watching." The silence that followed was deafening. Miranda had no response to that observation, and I had my answer about the woman's character. The foundation would definitely be looking elsewhere for marketing support. Thomas's call was equally revealing. He launched into an elaborate presentation about innovative construction techniques and cost-saving measures for charitable building projects. His enthusiasm was impressive, if transparently motivated by his newfound knowledge of my wealth. "These are fascinating ideas," I said when he finished his pitch. "I'm curious though, have your opinions about working with charitable organizations changed recently? Perhaps since Saturday evening?" Thomas paused, clearly trying to figure out the safest response. "Well, I've always been passionate about giving back to the community," he said carefully. "Meeting you at Amanda's wedding just reminded me how important this work is." I almost smiled at his careful phrasing. "I see. And what exactly reminded you of that importance? Was it something specific that happened at the reception?" I was giving him an opportunity to acknowledge his earlier behavior and perhaps redeem himself. "Just seeing such successful people come together for a good cause," he replied evasively. Thomas had failed my test. He couldn't even admit to his previous dismissive attitude, which told me everything about his integrity. Patricia's call surprised me with an unexpected turn. Instead of launching into a business pitch, the woman began with an apology. "Ms. Black, I need to apologize for my behavior Saturday night. I was rude and shallow, and I'm ashamed of myself." "I appreciate your honesty," I replied, genuinely curious about where this conversation would lead. "What prompted this reflection?" "I went home and thought about how I acted," Patricia continued. "I realized I'd become the kind of person I used to dislike. I was judging you based on your appearance instead of getting to know you as a person." Her voice was thick with genuine remorse. Patricia went on to explain that she had been raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs to support their family. "I should know better than anyone that a person's worth isn't measured by their clothes or jewelry," she said. "I lost sight of my values trying to fit in with that crowd." For the first time since Saturday night, I felt a spark of hope that someone might actually learn from the experience rather than simply trying to profit from it. I decided to give Patricia an opportunity to prove her sincerity. "The foundation is planning a fundraising dinner next month," I said. "If you're genuinely interested in our work, you could cater the event. But I want you to understand something first." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "This event will serve many people who might not look wealthy or important. Some of our donors are teachers, social workers, and small business owners who sacrifice to support our cause. They deserve the same respect as any billionaire." Patricia listened intently as I described the foundation's values and expectations. "I understand completely," she said firmly. "I promise you won't be disappointed. This is a chance for me to show who I really want to be." I scheduled a meeting to discuss the details, but I made it clear that Patricia would be watched carefully. One cruel evening could potentially be forgiven, but any future behavior that disrespected the foundation's supporters would end our relationship immediately. Patricia eagerly agreed to these terms, clearly understanding she was receiving an unexpected gift of redemption. As word spread about my new business relationships, the other wedding guests began to realize they had missed important opportunities. Miranda's company learned that Premier Marketing's proposal had been officially rejected, with the foundation citing incompatible values as the reason. Thomas received a polite letter explaining that his construction company would not be considered for any future foundation projects. The letter mentioned that the Harmony Foundation worked only with partners who demonstrated consistent integrity in all their interactions. Amanda called me that week, having heard about some of these business decisions. "I'm worried that Saturday night might have affected your professional relationships with people," she said nervously. "On the contrary," I replied. "Saturday night helped me make better professional decisions. I learned valuable information about people's character that will help me protect the foundation's interests." I wasn't being vindictive, I was simply being practical about business partnerships. Amanda began to understand that her wedding had become an unexpected business networking event, with consequences that extended far beyond one evening's social interactions. The foundation's fundraising dinner took place 4 weeks later in the ballroom of a downtown hotel. I had invited Amanda and Jonathan, along with several other wedding guests who had expressed interest in the foundation's work. Patricia's catering was exceptional, and more importantly, her staff treated every guest with equal respect and attention. I watched approvingly as Patricia personally welcomed donors regardless of their apparent wealth or status. Miranda arrived as someone's guest, clearly hoping to make a better impression. She approached me early in the evening, attempting to restart our conversation about marketing services. "I've been thinking about our phone call," she began hopefully. "Have you?" I replied politely. "And what conclusions did you reach?" I was curious whether Miranda had gained any self-awareness since our last conversation. Miranda launched into a prepared speech about learning from mistakes and growing as a person, but her words felt rehearsed and hollow. I listened politely before excusing myself to greet other guests. Some lessons, apparently, couldn't be learned by people unwilling to truly examine themselves. During the dinner's program, I was recognized for my leadership in charitable work. As I stood at the podium to accept the award, I looked out at the audience that included many faces from Amanda's wedding. True wealth, I began my acceptance speech, isn't measured by what we own, but by how we treat others when we think no one important is watching. Several wedding guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, recognizing the reference. I continued, "The Harmony Foundation exists because we believe every person has inherent worth and potential. We partner with people who share that belief not just in theory, but in practice." My eyes briefly met those of several wedding guests as I spoke. Patricia beamed with pride from the kitchen doorway, understanding that she had passed an important test. Meanwhile, Miranda and Thomas sat quietly, realizing they had lost more than just business opportunities. They had revealed their true character when it mattered most. The evening was a success, raising significant funds for the Foundation's programs while also serving as a lesson about the lasting consequences of how we treat others. In the weeks following the Foundation dinner, Amanda began volunteering with one of the Harmony Foundation's education programs. She worked with children from low-income families, helping them with homework and reading skills. "I've been thinking a lot about our college days," Amanda told me during one of our volunteer sessions. "You always stood up for people who were being picked on or left out. I used to admire that about you, but I lost sight of it somewhere along the way. I appreciated my friend's honesty and genuine effort to change." "We all get caught up in trying to impress the wrong people sometimes," I replied. "What matters is recognizing it and choosing to do better." Amanda nodded thoughtfully as she helped a young student with a math problem. "These kids remind me why kindness matters more than anything else," she said. "They don't care what brand of clothes I'm wearing. They just want someone to believe in them." I smiled, seeing glimpses of the friend I had known in college, someone who valued people for who they were rather than what they possessed. Growth was possible, even for adults who had lost their way. One afternoon, I was surprised to receive a visit from William Harrison, Jonathan's father, who had ignored me at the wedding. He arrived at the Foundation's offices with a large check and a request for a private meeting. "I want to make a significant donation," he announced, placing the check on my desk. "And I'd like to discuss ongoing partnership opportunities." The amount was impressive, clearly calculated to get my attention. I studied the check thoughtfully before looking up at him. "This is very generous, Mr. Harrison. What prompted your interest in our work?" I was curious whether he would acknowledge our previous interaction. William launched into a speech about corporate social responsibility and the importance of giving back to the community. His words were polished and professional, but he made no reference to our earlier meeting or his previous dismissal of me. I listened politely before returning the check to him. "I appreciate your interest," I said gently, "but the Foundation's partnerships require more than financial contributions. They require shared values and genuine commitment to our mission." William left confused and disappointed, still not understanding what he had done wrong. As months passed, I realized that my revenge had taken a form I hadn't originally planned. Rather than actively punishing those who had mistreated me, I had simply maintained my standards and let their own actions create the consequences. The Foundation's reputation for integrity attracted partners who shared our values, while those who had shown poor character found themselves naturally excluded. I hadn't needed to plot elaborate schemes or seek dramatic confrontations. I had simply refused to reward bad behavior with business opportunities. Patricia had become one of the Foundation's most trusted vendors, consistently demonstrating the growth and authenticity she had promised. Her business thrived through referrals from satisfied Foundation clients who appreciated her genuine respect for all people. Meanwhile, Miranda's marketing company struggled after losing several potential clients who valued character over clever sales pitches. Thomas's construction business faced similar challenges as word spread about his tendency to judge people by their appearance rather than their worth. The real revenge, I realized, was allowing people to face the natural consequences of their choices while building something beautiful with those who chose kindness. A year after Amanda's wedding, I reflected on how that evening had changed multiple lives. I had learned valuable lessons about discernment and the importance of choosing partners based on character rather than credentials. The foundation had grown stronger by attracting people who genuinely cared about our mission. Patricia had become not just a vendor but a friend who shared my commitment to treating everyone with dignity. Amanda had rediscovered her compassion through volunteer work and become a better person. Those who had shown their true nature through cruel behavior had simply revealed themselves to be poor choices for professional relationships. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, but I felt confident in my decision to build my business around people of integrity. The experience had reinforced my belief that true success came not from accumulating wealth, but from using whatever resources you had to make a positive difference in the world. Money was simply a tool, character determined how that tool would be used. 2 years later, I received another wedding invitation, this time from Patricia, who was marrying a teacher she had met while volunteering at one of the foundation's literacy programs. The ceremony would be simple but meaningful, focused on love rather than luxury. At Patricia's wedding, I wore the same simple black dress I had worn to Amanda's reception. This time, however, I was surrounded by friends who knew and appreciated me for who I was rather than what I owned. Amanda approached me during the reception, smiling genuinely. "You know," she said, "I learned more about true wealth from watching you that night than I had learned in years of chasing expensive things." I looked around at the diverse group of guests, teachers, social workers, foundation volunteers, and business owners who had all been drawn together by shared values rather than shared bank account balances. This was what real wealth looked like: relationships built on mutual respect, work that made a difference, and the satisfaction of staying true to your principles even when it would be easier to compromise. The woman they had once called a nobody had become somebody who truly mattered, not through revenge, but through grace. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.